What's up, everybody? My name is Alex Wilson, and I have my co-host beside me, Anthony Arado from Fireside Giants and Empire Sports Media Production, and you're listening to the Fireside Giants podcast. If you are a diehard Giants fan, you come to the right place. Daily episodes, interviews, draft content, and so much more. Make sure to drop a like and a subscription below on YouTube, and don't forget to leave a comment. We love to engage with everyone. Now, guys, talking about some mock draft scenarios. The Giants have a lot of different directions they can go. We've seen a lot of mock drafts up to this point. But we also know what Joe Shane wants. He really is keen on adding more draft capital. He said it recently. More swings of the bat, the more opportunities he has to rebuild this roster, the better. And with that being said, I think it's pretty fair to say that a trade back scenario is likely. I wouldn't say it's probable, but I give it a 50-50 chance at this point in time, depending on how the draft board falls out. But here's the thing. The Giants could very well miss on Evan Neal and Ikem Ekwonu because the teams in front of them, the Jets, Houston, Jacksonville, Detroit, they could all use some offensive line talent. Specifically, I would say that Houston and the Jets might look at Evan Neal, even the Jacksonville Jaguars looking at Evan Neal to really shore up that right side or left side for Trevor Lawrence. So, there's a good chance the Giants are stuck at number 5 and saying, we don't have either of those two options. What do we do now? Do we go with Charles Cross? Do we wait until 7 for Charles Cross? Do we trade back and look for an offensive lineman? In this scenario, I want to talk about a trade back, and I want to talk about a player that they could target and say, this guy could actually be a good developmental piece. He's tough as nails. He's aggressive. He's strong. He has his flaws, which is why he's kind of being mocked in the 15 to 18 range. But I think that he's a good developmental piece that fits exactly what Joe Shane is looking for in terms of an offensive lineman. This guy goes 100% balls to the wall every single time, Anthony. But before we dive into this interesting mock draft scenario, how are you doing today, my friend?
I'm doing great. I'm excited to talk about Trevor Penning. Small school guy, was from Northern Iowa, so it's not like he played up against the best competition. And that's obviously going to be one of the biggest cons to Trevor Penning. One of his biggest flaws is the fact that he didn't face pro competition all the time. Now, to his credit, he went to the Senior Bowl, faced a lot of pro competition there, and dominated a lot of that competition. So he's definitely got the ability to develop one day into a capable starter in the NFL. Of course, he's not being pegged as a top 5 pick in this year's draft, but from that, I've seen him go as early as 7 to the Giants in some mock drafts and as late as like 25. So he's definitely a middle of the first round pick. And it's going to be whether or not we think that's, the right valuation of him. But I think it probably is just because the traits are there. He's 6'7", 320 pounds. He's a real beast, and he's a dominant run blocker, super violent. Yes, he has his flaws, as Alex mentioned. A lot of those come in pass protection and fundamentals. But in terms of having that raw ability to be a dominant run blocker, he has that, and he has that like probably better than anybody else at the tackle position in this draft class. He's just a dominant run blocker, and I'm excited to see exactly where he ends up and what he's able to do because, like I said, he really kicked some ass at the Senior Bowl. I think that he was voted the standout player on the offensive line of the week. So when you see something like that, small school guy go dominate all these guys. There's people that play, at all the big schools, Oklahoma, Georgia. You've got players from those teams playing at the Senior Bowl. But when you got Northern Iowa, Trevor Penning kicking ass and dominating and being one of the best players there, that's what's really eye-opening, and that's what tells everybody that he's going to be a first-round pick.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I've been doing a bunch of mock drafts trying to figure out where Trevor Penning would land. And just so you guys know, we're going to do a draft, analysis film profile on him tomorrow so we can get a better look at what he has to offer in terms of the power and aggression he does provide. Trevor Penning's a really interesting player. He graded out as one of the best run blockers in this draft class. He's huge. He's a freaking 6'7", 321-pound unit meatball of a human being. You don't find people that have that kind of make very often. Now, his flaws are mostly balance oriented and fundamental oriented. He isn't like the most athletic guy in terms of his lateral ability and agility side to side. He can get beat on inside moves. He does not lose bull rushes very often. In the Senior Bowl, he did lose one, but it was mainly because his feet and hands were just so out of sync, and he just failed to get his hands inside, and his feet were caught underneath of him. But most of the time, he stands up pretty well to bull rushes. His biggest thing is against smaller pass rushers with speed going inside or around the edge. He can do a pretty good job of kicking out and stealing the edge and following guys around, but the inside move sometimes can beat him. That's what Andrew Thomas had trouble with during his rookie season, with his ankle injury kind of bogging him down. He was getting beat inside a lot, which is a cardinal sin for offensive tackles, and eventually he figured out how to fix that. And he has the speed and agility now to kind of feint inside, but then jump onto the outside if they try to use a redirection move. Trevor Penning will have to learn something similar in terms of protecting in the inside, but having the speed to kick out and really seal the edge there and let at least push guys around the pocket so he can protect it appropriately. But in this scenario, Anthony, I want to discuss the possibility of trading back and what they might look like. There are three teams I have in mind in terms of a trade back scenario: the Washington football team at 11, Denver Broncos at 9, and the New Orleans Saints at 18. All three of those teams need quarterbacks. Of course, Denver's like, we want Aaron Rodgers, like this and that, but I don't know if that will happen. It seems like Aaron Rodgers and Green Bay are kind of in terms, are going to come back together. They're speaking on good terms, at least. When you're looking at this, do you think that going back to 18 is something you'd be willing to risk? Because New Orleans needs a quarterback, right? I don't know if I'm willing to go that far back, because I'm kind of nervous that we might not be able to get our guy if we're targeting Penning in a trade back scenario. I think 11 with Washington makes sense. I don't like to make trades inter-division, but Washington needs a quarterback. They might want to get Kenny Pickett. They might want to get Malik Willis. Denver, a lot of teams, a lot of mock drafts have Denver taking Malik Willis. So, if we're talking about Washington, do you think that might be a good trade partner for us in terms of trading back to 11, maybe getting a third round pick out of it, or maybe, I don't know, a little bit more, and then getting Trevor Penning instead of settling for Charles Cross? Because that's kind of, we could add more draft capital and get a good offensive tackle. But I don't know how much the difference between Charles Cross is and Trevor Penning that I wouldn't be willing to trade back. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think the main difference between Charles Cross and Trevor Penning is going to be scheme fit, right? The Giants might prefer Charles Cross because he's an ace of a pass blocker, and Trevor Penning is a dominant run blocker. And as we've mentioned, the Giants are going to be running a lot of 11 personnel, a lot of pass blocking, because they're going to be throwing the ball way more than they're going to be running the ball. And they're Brian Dable. At least that's the assumption. So if we're talking about who fits into the scheme better, it's going to be Charles Cross because he is an elite pass blocker. And that's kind of where we get past those top two, right? Ike Mekwonu and Evan Neal are both just phenomenal prospects in both regards. But the second tier, where it's Trevor Penning and Charles Cross, it's like there's one elite run blocker and there's one elite pass blocker. So which one do you prefer? Which one do you want to plug in to your offensive system? And that's kind of where I think the Giants might lean towards the Charles Cross of the world rather than going to Trevor Penning. Now, Trevor Penning, because he went to a small school, could absolutely start falling down the draft boards and could slide on draft day into that 18 range that you're mentioning. Because like I said, I've seen him go as early as 7 in some mock drafts. I've seen him go as late as 25. So he's kind of got a weird range here. I'm sure his performance at the upcoming combine will really determine where he gets drafted and how he does in those interviews. But he is a player that we could see fall because he went to a small school. Now, in terms of a trade down scenario, all the way to 18 with the Saints, I think that's a good idea if you get a good player with number 5, right? Like, let's say Kayvon Thibodeau goes number 5 to the Giants, then I think you can feel comfortable trading down from 7 to 18 because you already got a stud out of the first round. So you can just gain some more, draft capital and try and extract value that way and try and hit on a second later round pick, right? So I think that's something that the Giants could consider. And then you also mentioned maybe trading down to 11 with Washington. Now that's weird, right? Because that's only 4 spots down. So it's not really you're getting that much value out of it. You could get good value, but it's not like you're going to get a future first round pick out of that value. But also, it's a trade within the division. Now, how likely is that to happen? We've seen it happen before. We saw Philadelphia and Dallas make a trade, the Micah Parsons and Devontae Smith trade last year. Of course, we saw that, but that was really a rare occurrence. That's very atypical. You don't see teams trade within the division. That's very rare to see happen, but it is something that could potentially happen if Washington is that convicted on a quarterback and feel like they have to go up to number 7 to get him, right? If Malik Willis is on the board at number 7, and let's say another team is trading up, or maybe they think Denver might go with Kenny Pickett at 9, but Washington really wants Kenny Pickett. That's where they might jump to number 7 with the Giants and say, hey, I don't care if we're in the same division. I need to trade up and get this quarterback. So that's where we could see that happening, though I do think it's a very unlikely scenario that the Giants make a trade within their division, especially to give another team a quarterback. I think that's kind of where you look at it. When it's a quarterback, it makes it very unlikely. But in terms of Trevor Penning, if the Giants were to take him at number 7, I wouldn't be upset about it, right? I'd be like, okay, they got an offensive tackle and they got one with really good traits that they could develop into a good player one day. But did they extract all of the value that they could out of that 7th overall pick by taking a guy penciled in as a mid first round pick? Probably not. So I prefer the trade down scenario to get Trevor Penning maybe at around 15 overall, somewhere in that range. I think that would be a perfect home run selection.
Yeah, I mean, personally, I've been asking a bunch of friends who are Jets fans, saying like, who do you guys like in the draft? Who is the player that you think the Jets will draft? Because every fan base, if you're on Twitter or whatever, every fan base is talking about the same stuff. Every fan base thinks they're getting Kayvon Thibodeau. Every fan base thinks they're getting Ike Mekwonu. So I try to go and do my due diligence and figure out what other teams are thinking about. And all of them that I've talked to, and I have 4 or 5 friends who are Jets fans, and they all say they want Ikem Ekwonu, all of them, which is very interesting because the Giants, of course, Daniel Jeremiah said it would be a slam dunk pick for the Giants at number 5. He may not get past number 4 because of the Jets. They really like him, and they're not even thinking of him as a tackle. They want him at guard. They want him at right guard next to George Fant and solidifying that side. So it's interesting to think because the Giants could realistically be stuck with the decision of do we stay at 5 and take Charles Cross, the best pass rusher available? Because if the Jets go Ikem Ekwonu, Kayvon Thibodeau will likely be available at 5. Do you pass on Kayvon Thibodeau? You take your tackle immediately, make sure that Charles Cross doesn't get taken at number 6. Or do you trade back and hope that, maybe you can get a good pass rusher and you can get an offensive tackle? Now, here's what I think I would do. I think I would go with the best pass rusher at number 5 because Charles Cross is not worthy of being a 5th overall pick. You go best player available there. Number 7's the more interesting scenario. If Charles Cross is available and you think, okay, you know what? There's a couple of teams here. Joe Shane's going to be calling up other teams, trying to figure out what they want, what their needs are, trying to establish what the value is. And if he can trade back to the 9 to 11 range with Denver or Washington, he might still be able to land Charles Cross, or you get Trevor Penning. Like Anthony said, Charles Cross is probably the better fit for the Giants because he is the best pure pass protector in this draft class. That being the case, the Giants are going to probably be passing 60 to 70% of the time. So you want that to be a focal point. I think that the best pass rusher available and Charles Cross at 7 would be something I'm more than okay with. But, at the end of the day, if you can get more draft capital and go back for Trevor Penning, I'm not opposed to that either. So that's kind of what this video is about, though, just talking about the potential trade scenario of the Giants moving back, getting more draft capital because Joe Shane seems to be interested in that concept, and then getting a first-round graded tackle in the process. But we don't know where he's going to go because, like Alex Leatherwood went in the mid-first round last year out of nowhere when he was a second-round draft pick, and he ended up being an awful right tackle that kicked him into guard, and he's better guard. So, there's different things here that play a part. Teams always end up overspending for offensive line tackles. Early in the draft, and you never know when guys are going to go. So you kind of got to take your opportunities when you get them, which makes me think that if Charles Cross was there at 7, they may not risk it and they may just over him, guys. But let me know what you think in the comment section below on YouTube. I'm really curious to hear your thoughts on what the Giants should do, what they might do in the scenario, mind you, that Evan Neal and Ikem Ekwonu are both off the board. What do you do then? Do you stick with Charles Cross at 7? Do you trade back to try and get Trevor Penning and add more draft capital? How do you feel about this? Because I think trading back makes a lot of sense in terms of getting more draft capital because this team needs a full rebuild. There's a couple more topics we're going to discuss in the coming days regarding it seems like the front office might want to move on from Logan Ryan. His contract's a little bit tough to move around from. We'll discuss how that would go. It wouldn't make much sense unless you're going to get another safety in the draft, like a Kyle Hamilton maybe, but anything's possible. I'm curious to see what you guys think about this trade back scenario and what they should do in the sense that, 2 of the top offensive tackles are off the board by the time the Giants are on the clock. So curious to hear your thoughts. Make sure to drop a comment below on YouTube. Make sure to like and subscribe. As always, my friends, we'll catch you guys on the next Fireside Giants episode.